Hi, I'm Dr. Benjamin T. Jones. The High Court decision is in. The postal survey on marriage equality will go ahead. And if you're planning to vote no, or if you're leaning that way, but still open to hearing some opposing views, then I'd like to offer a few thoughts before you vote no. And firstly, I'd like to start with an apology to anyone who feels that they've been bullied or stigmatised, labelled a bigot or a homophobe, simply for being cautious about this decision. Although I think we need to keep this in perspective. Bullying is something the LGBT community know a lot about, and the rates of bullying of LGBT kids in our schools is way too high, and this leads to some really horrific outcomes: poor academic results, depression, anxiety, even suicide attempts. So I am genuine when I say I'm sorry if you feel that you've been bullied for your religious beliefs, but I hope also that you have empathy for what the LGBT community go through, and I hope you'll have compassion for vulnerable LGBT kids when you make your decision in this upcoming survey. There's a bit of a pattern with the No campaign in that they go for what could be called the slippery slope argument. They don't really present an argument against marriage equality, but rather there's an idea that this will make more political correctness, that this could be a curbing of freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of religion. The official No ads have really been about the Safe Schools program and have worried about boys wearing dresses and things like that. The most ridiculous example was Corey Bernardi claiming that same-sex marriage could somehow lead to bestiality. And I suppose the challenge I'd put to you is stand up for what you believe in, but be clear on what you're arguing against. If you're against bestiality, then argue against bestiality. If you're against political correctness, then argue against it. If you want to see freedom of speech and freedom of religion enshrined and you want to see protections, then pursue those goals. But you certainly shouldn't confuse the issues, which are clearly, in a legal sense, quite separate. You certainly can vote yes for marriage equality while also wanting to seek protection of religion and various other protections. But the last point, and the most important point to consider, is just what kind of country do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a country where freedom is maximised and people can live their lives peaceably the way they want to, or where religious rules are enforced through the power of the state? Essentially, do you want a democracy or a theocracy? You might believe genuinely and with sincerity that marriage is a Christian institution for the raising of children. That is your absolute right. But even if you believe that, would you seriously want non-Christians to be banned from marriage? Would you seriously want the elderly to be banned? Infertile people? And you may sincerely believe that, despite the literature, that homosexuality is a choice and it is a sin. But again, in that scenario, if you're honest with yourself, do you want to live in a secular democratic society or one where sin, as defined by who, is banned? Do you want the pubs closed? Do you want divorce to be recriminalised? Do you want all businesses to be shut down on the Sabbath? Who is entrusted to decide what is and isn't a sin? And how soon would it be before someone decides something you like to partake in is a sin? Is that the type of society that you want? A religious marriage is fundamentally different from a state marriage. A religious marriage is a privilege, and the priest or the rabbi, the imam, whatever it is, they have the right to withhold that privilege, not just because of gender, but because the person doesn't uphold their morals and values and ethics for whatever reason. It's a privilege. State marriage, however, is a right. There's no sense of moral acceptance in it. You simply need to obey the law to have that right. At the moment, the law just says you must be an adult, you must not currently be married, and you must have the opposite gender of the person you want to marry. And when seen in that context, that last one starts to seem a bit ridiculous. When I decided to get married, I needed to ask one person's permission, my wife. The LGBT community have to ask the permission now of the entire country. Ask yourself honestly, how would you feel if the shoe was on the other foot? How would you feel if it was your life, your love, your ability to raise children, your ability to have a happy, lasting relationship being judged, your worthiness to have a right that everyone else takes for granted? If you vote yes, you lose nothing. Your family and children lose nothing. Your church and your community lose nothing. Voting yes is an act of compassion, it's an act of grace, it's an act of goodwill, it's an act of kindness. And especially if you're devoutly religious, then voting yes is also a powerful statement on your behalf that within this tolerant, multicultural, secular democracy we call Australia, you truly do value the rights and the equality of your fellow citizens as strongly as you value your own. Thank you.